Every single one of us, we've been through challenge and adversity. And when we can learn to accept that you have an opportunity to get up off that mat one more time than you've been knocked down, and that's actually the period of time in your life when you build your greatest strength, that's when we start to move into figuring out how great we can be. We live in a world right now that oftentimes, for me, it almost seems like it's so broken. People don't even know what to believe anymore. In a world where you get to choose what you believe, you get to choose whether or not you get up off that mat of life, you get to choose how you think and you act. Why would you choose to not have the perspective that you've probably been through something tougher than what you're going through right now? And if you remain disciplined in everything that you do, you're going to make it through those tough times and be stronger.
Remember, adversity is your advantage.
Hey, welcome back, friends, to another amazing episode of the CEO Show with yours truly, Bryce Henson, a show dedicated to teaching leadership, promoting capitalism, and defending free speech. Ben Newman, my dear friend, welcome to the show, my brother.
Bryce, it is awesome to be with you. It's awesome because of your energy, your fire, your passion that you show up with. You know, we've been connected for a while on social media. Finally had the opportunity to meet down at Amberley Lago's event. But most importantly, we're both Spartan dogs. So anytime we can get a couple Michigan State Spartan dogs together, you know we're going to have a good time.
Heck yeah, man. Well, super grateful. You kind of teed it up in April. You met in person. I've been following you for a while, connected on social. And it was just a very serendipitous type of experience to have a mutual friend in Amberley connect us. And here we are. And we're going to talk about your zone of genius, resilience, discipline, leadership. I teed this up in your introduction, but man, you are a world-class peak performance, mental performance coach. I think recently you were honored one of the top 5 mental performance coaches rated by USA Today, with some big names like Brandon Burchard, Ed Milet, the infamous Tim Grover. So we're going to unpack that now. I'm going to go straight into it. How do you define, from your perspective, what you do as a mental performance coach? And then give us some backstory on some experiences that really shaped your, career and you getting into this line of work.
You know, for me, I've found in doing this for over 19 years that it's the same for me, it's the same for you, and it's the same for everybody listening. Every single one of us, we've been through challenge and adversity. And when we can learn to accept that you have an opportunity to get up off that mat one more time than you've been knocked down, and that's actually the period of time in your life when you build your greatest strength, that's when we start to move into figuring out how great we can be. You know, Bryce, I think we both can agree. And the fact that, like, on your show, we get to talk about whatever we want to talk about. We live in a world right now that oftentimes, for me, it almost seems like it's so broken. You know, the media and people don't even know what to believe anymore.
Yes.
And in a world where you get to choose what you believe, you get to choose whether or not you get up off that mat of life, you get to choose how you think and you act. Why would you choose to not have the perspective that you've probably been through something tougher than what you're going through right now? And that if you remain disciplined in everything that you do, you're going to make it through those tough times and be stronger. So that's what I love about my work every day. And, you know, in that work, Bryce, I still have to work on that for me. And every single one of you listening, you have to make the choice. Are you willing to work on that for you? And so this has been my work for over 19 years. It's a blessing every single day. You know, it's taken me into areas that I never knew were going to happen. I mean, Bryce, I was a 26-year-old kid, had just graduated from Michigan State just a handful of years earlier. I'm a financial advisor in a firm in Chicago because I'd gotten off to a fast start because of adversity and challenge in my life. They call me and they say, we'll offer you $500 and pay all your expenses to come and tell us what you're doing. And Bryce, I'm like, that's a thing? Like, you can get paid like $500 and go speak? Like, I didn't even know you could do that. And I went and I fell in love with the opportunity to speak. And the next thing you know, I start coaching. And then you start writing books. And you get all these mentors and coaches that I still have in my life. I still have 2 coaches and reading books every day. And so it's been this pursuit, not just for me, but in this ability to pour into others that, you know, now I get to be on a sideline every week during college football season. And, you know, yesterday I'm with a Fortune 500 company here in St. Louis for a 3rd straight day of talks with their leadership team and their clients from around the country. I mean, Bryce, it's one of those things where I've realized that when we choose long obedience in the same direction with aggressive patience, and we shift our perspective when we face adversity, it's incredible what we can accomplish.
Long obedience with what was the other part?
It's long obedience in the same direction with aggressive patience.
With aggressive
Let me actually,
love
with
that.
aggressive patience. I've got to say this about you. There's so many things that I admire about how you show up. Number one, so like when you meet Bryce, and I know he likes doing these in person, so I appreciate that he's like, man, we got to do this show, but like we're not doing it in person. But like when you meet Bryce in person, like the dude is fit, he's in shape, he's got energy, he wants to be where he is. Like he's a guy, be where your feet are. But Bryce, I've got to highlight this. When you reached out and we had a phone call and you just wanted to run some things by me.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I love sharing the pain that I've had to go through by making really bad decisions and spending money in the wrong places. So, when somebody calls, I'm like, please listen to the advice so you don't make the mistakes that I've made. And you listened and you took it in. And, a lot of it was stuff that I'd shared from a dear friend of our mutual friend of ours, John Gordon. It's, hey, here's what John shared with me and here's why I do. And you sent me a text. I mean, I bet it wasn't 10 days later. And you're like, I did exactly what you said I should have done. And I forgot about those slides. And I painted these pictures with my words. And I read that text message and I'm like, Bryce is my kind of guy. Like this is a guy that I can hang around with and spend time with because you're a doer, you're an action taker. And I just encourage everybody listening, especially those that listen to the show every week. Like I always say that you can only lead somebody to the level of discipline in which you live. And it's no wonder you've done what you've done with FitBody. It's no wonder that Bedros trusts you the way that he does, because you show up and do what you say you're going to do. So that meant a lot to me, Bryce, because I have a lot of those conversations with people who choose to not listen. And I'm not saying I know everything, but I've screwed up enough to have figured out a couple of things.
Oh, shoot, man. Well, I appreciate the nice words. And I know talent and leadership when I see it. And I feel, the feeling is mutual. The way you show up, your energy. I mean, you are a purebred leader, which is actually my next question. I want to unpack that because this show is about leadership and you are an exceptional world-class leader in your own right. You've also been able to work under incredible leaders like the GOAT, Nick Saban, which I'm still so blown away. And we had that conversation about one of the most leadership rich, I guess, moments in your career working under him. So I'd love to unpack that. But from a leadership trait perspective, what do you think are the most beneficial traits in leadership? And I'm curious to, talk a little bit about your war stories. What are some challenges you've faced to be able to develop as a strong leader?
Well, yes, it was a blessing to work for Coach Saban for 5 years and to be a part of a couple national championships at Alabama and, to work with Coach Kleiman at Kansas State, where I've been with him for 10 years and national championships at North Dakota State and a Big 12 championship a couple of years ago at K-State when people said, why are we even taking that job? You'll never win football games there. Those two men are the two winningest coaches in all of college football over the last 15 years. So I got really lucky to receive a doctorate in leadership from those two amazing leaders. But the greatest leader I've ever been around was actually my mom, Bryce.
Oh.
And my mom battled a rare muscle disease called amyloidosis. At the time of her diagnosis, there were 2 hospitals in the United States that were treating the disease, the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota and the Boston Medical Center. My mom met with a doctor by the name of Dr. Martha Skinner, tells my mom the first time they ever meet, Janet, you're only the second woman under 40 years old we've ever seen or heard of having this disease. And my mom takes out this old blue Mead notebook, maybe like you used to have in school, Bryce, maybe yours was another color. And she writes, beat the statistics, beat the odds, live with a disease that is chronic and fatal, believe in yourself, combat anything, purpose in life. And my mom allowed these words to go onto this page to unleash her positive mental attitude. And as a single mom fighting to make ends meet, even when my mother had 24-hour nursing care in our house, her last year living, she would come to the dinner table to ask me every day, literally with an IV stand. Sometimes it took one nurse, two nurses, to ask me how my day was at school. And even though my mother passed away 11 days before my 8th birthday, and she took the pen that she was writing within that journal and passed it on for me to have the opportunity to continue to write her story, Bryce, she's the greatest champion of life I've ever known. My mom taught me I learned a lot from the GOAT. I learned a lot from Coach Clyde. But my mom taught me the greatest life lesson I've ever learned. It's not how long you live, it's how you choose to live your life. And I think for everybody listening, I'm not the only one that has a story of pain and challenge. Many of you have been through worse. Many of you have been through something similar or your own kind of pain. But I think when we all look back, this is what I was alluding to earlier. It's how you frame it. It's the perspective that you give it and how you attack from there. And I've just learned that I want to embrace the days that I've been given that my mother never got. My mom passed at 38 years old. I'm 45. Bryce, that's 7 extra years that my mom never got. I'm just going to choose to not waste a day. And I encourage other people to do the same.
Ben, man, that's so powerful, and I appreciate you sharing that. And we are just kindred spirits. Thankfully, my mom is still, with us and going strong. I have a really strong relationship with her, but very kindred spirits. My mom raised 3 kids on her own, had an unfortunate situation, actually a blessing disguised as a tragedy. My father was a drug addict, addicted to alcohol and gambling, not the trifecta for a good family upbringing, but one of the things you talked about was mental conditioning. My leadership philosophy is adversity is your advantage. And certainly, Ben, you've been through a lot of adversity. We have a lot in common in terms of our youth, in terms of growing up in the Midwest, going to college, having that kind of, drive and determination to be the best versions of ourselves. And I appreciate you sharing that story. That's very touching. And there's a lot of gold there.
Let me share something really quick here, Bryce. I think it's important. My mother, I mentioned divorced when I was 6 months old. My mother made a conscious choice to divorce my father, who was a drug addict, alcoholic, later became a gambling addict, addicted to everything under the sun. Same story. I mean, when my mother passed away, my dad moves back into the house. And, shortly thereafter, I turned 8 years old. My dad's high on drugs or drunk on the couch every single night when I get home from school. So, brother, I hit rock bottom by 8 years old, right? You saw the same things that I saw. Yet, my mom divorces my dad. You don't get to divorce your parents. You didn't get to divorce your so there's these things that we learn, and what a connection that we have, because there's so many people that would hear stories like ours and go, "Oh, Bryce Henson, you mean the guy that he's been in and out of rehab his whole life?" And people they'd go, "Well, of course look at the kid's childhood."
Mm-hmm.
And I just encourage people, as easy as it is to resist it, when you're growing up, if you have pain, if you're in the middle of it right now, you're young and you're listening right now, or if you're in midlife and don't resist when somebody's there to help you. The easy thing is to resist. Just lean in and accept the help. Bryce, I had teachers, coaches, all these people who were like, "Man, this little guy's broken, but we're going to help this guy." And I don't know what it was, but God always pulled me to these people to say, listen to what this teacher has to say. Listen to what this coach has to say. Allow that coach to guide you. Allow that coach to teach you. It's amazing what we've been through, Bryce, but another big connection.
Appreciate you sharing that story. And, one of the big takeaways is, you mentioned you thought you were broken in that moment, but you are literally one of the top 5 mindset peak performance coaches on the planet. And let's talk about reframing. Let's talk about mental conditioning. This is what you're known for. So I'm curious, in your line of work, how do you mentally condition your athletes? And then where do you think, mental conditioning has made a difference in their performance and also your performance in life?
Well, if you don't mind, and we could certainly give some athletic examples, but I want to do a business example first.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very important. Of course, this being the CEO show, 70% of my work is still in the corporate world. So people always see my backdrop and the rings and the jerseys and the balls that players have signed for me. A lot of CEOs aren't signing the balls and jerseys for me. But, this is all the athletic stuff. But only 30% of my work is sports, 70% business. And one of the things that I've taught for years in the business world, and the first 5 years of me doing this work, I didn't do anything in sports. So from 06 to 11. And I remember a concept that I taught, which really was embraced by the St. Louis Cardinals front office, their sales team. When they brought me in 2011, they had just won a world championship. But remember, the sales team brought me in, right? So I'm brought in by one of the VPs of sales. And I came in and I taught this concept, the power to reframe. And there were a couple of things that were happening in the Cardinals front office. So yes, I'm still talking about a sports organization, but this was corporate. This was sales. And they had said a lot of the individuals, it's just so easy that they'll have a bunch of great phone calls in a row, and then they just stop making phone calls, right? Bunch of sales, it's inbound, it's not as tough. But then there's also the challenging calls that they get. And I remember I shared a concept that I call the power to reframe. We have a playbook called Your Mental Toughness Playbook. And actually, with our Spartan connection, even though it's available on Amazon for purchase, I'm going to give it to all your listeners for free. If you go to freeplaybook.net, you can download the ebook version for free. There's been over 1 million downloads or purchases of this book since I've been teaching this. There's 6 mental training tools in that playbook. We're now on the 4th edition. One of the tools is the power to reframe. And I shared with everybody in the Cardinals front office, I said, look, if you have a great call, things are growing great, you got to reframe and you got to keep attacking. If you face a really tough call and you're like, I do not feel like doing this right now, you have to reframe and you got to keep attacking. Far too many people live to their feelings, good or bad, and they allow their feelings to dictate how they show up rather than relying on their standards that have caused them to be great. So it's reframing, recommitting back to your standards. And the standard is I dial the phone if I get kicked in the pants, and I dial the phone if I have a great sale, because that's what you do. And that's the standard. And that power to reframe is something when I left after one of the first trainings I did, and they kept me there for a few years because things were working. They said the power to reframe just stuck because it's easy. The concepts I teach are simple. I was a 19 on my ACT. I was an out-of-stater going to Michigan State. I was smart because I worked hard. I had a 3.6 and a 19 on my ACT. It was automatic acceptance to Michigan State back in the day because they wanted out-of-state people. I'm like, a 3.6 and a 19, and you want me? Let's go. And so I teach simple concepts, Bryce, because I believe success, discipline, and leadership can be simple. It doesn't have to be a dissertation that we write.
Oh man, that is so good. So good. In terms of kind of playing off this mindset, it's a similar type of concept of resilience. This is something that you teach your athletes, teach your CEOs, teach your students like me, enrolling your coaching program, learning from you, just very fired up on that. So how would you say your approach is to building resilience within the individuals, within the teams that you coach?
Well, I think people have to realize and recognize what I mentioned earlier is oftentimes when you're in the middle of a challenge, you have to say, we're going to build our greatest strength. Like this is actually when we're going to perform at our highest possible level. I've had the opportunity to work with Coach Stephanie White, who's the head coach of the Connecticut Sun, the WNBA team. And Coach White and I have been friends for years. I spoke at her teams at Vanderbilt. I spoke for her for the Indiana Fever when she took them to the WNBA finals back in 2015. And I've been working with the team this year. The team is currently undefeated. And one of the things that we talked about was talk to the players about the fact that you're about to walk into adversity at some point in time. And when you walk through it, recognize you're going to build more strength than in this than in the 9-0 streak that you're on right now. So a lot of times you get so caught up, you get seduced by success. But I said, if you start having these conversations now, the adversity's coming. But the blessing is, if we can go 9-0, when we go through that adversity, we'll be even stronger. That's how you become a champion. And I think the greatest leaders help people realize, even during the tough times, they're going to be smart enough to say, I've got foresight. This ain't going to be sunshine and rainbows the whole season. We're going to have some challenge. Are we willing to stay strong through it together? And I believe they will. I mean, she was the coach of the year in the WNBA last year, and she's an amazing leader. She's an amazing coach. But those are things great coaches do. They don't rest on their laurels and say, look, we're undefeated. They look and say, what's coming? What's coming in front of me that we better be aware of?
Amen. And that's leadership. That's vision. That's casting vision. That's getting your team, your organization behind that, which for me is a quality and characteristic. It's the foundation of leadership. Ben, speaking of championships and winning, you are a winner. I mean, from your championships at North Dakota State, Alabama, Kansas State, shoot, you're friends with some legendary people like Tim Grover, who wrote the book on winning, who was the former personal trainer to Michael Jordan, to Kobe Bryant, to Dwayne Wade, and the list goes on. What is your relationship with winning? And how would you say, Ben, you define success for you?
Well, for me, success is actually your ability to look yourself in the mirror one day at a time and say, today I gave it my very best. And if you can look yourself in the mirror every day and say, today I gave it my very best, nobody can ever ask any more of you than that. And you can't ask any more of yourself than your very best. But the key to that, Bryce, is that it actually has to be your very best. Every single person listening right now, every single person, you and I could have a one-on-one coaching session and say, tell me about the period of time when you were a champion. And they could say, oh, it was, man, my second and third quarter last year, I was on fire. Here's what I did. How did you show up? What did you do every day? I did this. I was reading books. I was working out. I was on top of my nutrition, which gave me confidence. And then when I got to the office, because of my confidence, I did X, I did Y, I did Z, and I did it every day. And then we could say to that individual, and you and I have seen this far too many times, how are they doing today? And it's like 50% of what it once was. See, because when they were in it and they were winning, they're looking in the mirror and being honest and saying, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep. But naturally, people pull off. It's hard to keep winning because we get seduced by success. Mm-hmm. So I believe the key is you have to be relentlessly accountable to yourself, one day at a time, not trip on anything that's behind you, but also don't celebrate the things that are behind you for far too long, and recognize that if you want to win in the future, it'll be done by what you do and what you manufacture today. And so to me, winning, it's an ongoing, never finished, own it mentality. It's why Tim and I get along so well. He and I have become so close. He's become just a dear, dear friend and mentor in my life. He actually joked last year, and it's not true, but he spoke at our boot camp in Las Vegas, and actually he's coming back. Our big boot camp this year is in Puerto Rico, and he and Phil Heath and I were doing an extra day at this boot camp, just the three of us, with 30 of the 150 attendees. And in Vegas last year, he goes, I think Ben is the only one who's got more rings than me. And I'm like, that's bullshit, Grover. Like, you got way more rings than me. And I think your rings are even bigger than the ones that I have. I mean, the number of guys that he's helped get into the Hall of Fame and championships, it's a blessing when you can have somebody like Tim in your life, because Tim makes me feel like I haven't accomplished anything yet. And Bryce, that's what I want in my life. I want the individuals who, like, when I think of Tim, or, you know, he calls to check on me and I answer the phone and you just hear his voice. It's like, all right, it's time to get better today. Yep. And like, that's what I crave. I don't crave me still celebrating a championship from Alabama in 2020. I loved it. I love those players. Some of them are like little brothers to me to this day. I talk to them almost every day. But the reality is that's not what defines you. What you do today defines you. The fact that I have a relationship with these players 4 years later filming this, that's more important than the win. And so winning is very important, but there's so much that comes from winning that's bigger than what most people see.
Oh man, there's a lot to unpack there. You are a true winner and leader. One of the things I just loved about what you said is, to be a leader and a winner, you have to be relentlessly accountable to yourself. And Ben, that's part of my leadership philosophy, is to lead yourself, then you can lead your family, and then you can lead your empire. You can't lead your empire, and you certainly can't lead your family unless you can lead yourself. So I love that framework. Now, one of the frameworks that I want to talk about that you mentioned earlier, but I want to dive a little bit deeper, is your leadership taglines: and standards over feelings. Now we go, attack. These are just fabric of strong leadership, strong mindset. Can you unpack a little bit about your philosophy and your taglines? I would love to, paint the picture to our audience.
Absolutely. First off, let me say you mentioned it earlier, which I appreciated you saying it, but you're going to be joining our Coach to Coaches program. And meant the world to me when, number one, when you reached out, you took the action. Then you said, how can we do this more? I said, hey, join Coach to Coaches. Let's do this. Let's take it to the next level. The reason why I bring this up is one of the first lessons that we teach. It's week 2. I mean, it's 110 pages of curriculum in Coach to Coaches. We literally take people behind the scenes of how I built this over 19 years. Week 2, we talk about consistency of messaging. This is really important, Bryce. I've gone into sports organizations. I've gone into corporations. And you say, okay, what's your philosophy? Well, 1 week I show these Muhammad Ali videos. And then the next week I show cheetahs running in the wild. And then the next week I show Michael Phelps. I'm like, hold on a second. Like, people can't even keep up with the direction that you're trying. There's like no consistency. And so one of the things that I've found, and I really uncovered this with Coach Kleiman at North Dakota State, was the importance of consistency of messaging, because Coach Kleiman's always taught us you find your edge in the details. So rather than coming up with a brand new theme for the week, have consistency in your messaging. And what ends up happening is the number of people who they see me and they go, now we go, because they follow me on social media.
Yeah.
Hey, continued fight. Now we go. And, it's humbling because it's like, okay, it works to be consistent. If I had a brand new tagline every day, nobody would ever remember. But if you're building a brand or you're building a culture, then if something works, stick with it. So Coach Saban loves standard over feelings. In 2017, when I sat in his office, just the two of us, and Saban interviews me, like, you're with the GOAT one-on-one in his office. And the GOAT says, Ben, what are you going to talk to my players about? Bryce, I firmly believe this conversation kept me at Alabama for 5 years. I mean, most people go and they speak at Alabama, which even if you go and speak at Alabama one time, it was one of the highest of honors for people who get to speak there. I was there 15 to 20 times a year on his payroll as a mental conditioning coach. And what kept me there was standard over feelings. He literally said, what are we going to talk? I said, Coach, standard over feelings. I said, when I walked through the doors of this Malmore football complex, I could feel the expectation. I could feel the standard. And I said this earlier, don't allow your feelings to dictate how you show up. I said, I want to work with your players to continue to embrace the standard. Coach, I said, if we win 55-0, and I was speaking with confidence like I was already working for him, right? If we win 55-0 on Saturday, I want to help the players identify the standard of what it's going to take to get even better, to break down the game film, to focus on their nutrition, to do more with their recovery. It's got to be standard over feelings. And those are things now you can go back and hear Coach Saban say standard over feelings in press conferences. Tua said it in press conferences. And it's one of those things, if it works, then keep using the messaging. And I think sometimes as leaders, we're constantly trying to shake it up rather than what you recognize. And I appreciate the question.
Yeah.
Stay consistent in your messaging.
Oh, I love that. In fact, one of your good friends, Ed Milet, who one of the things that he talked about, what I really gleaned a lot of value from, he's like, many times people want to share new things to new people when really you should be sharing the same things to new people. Actually, I didn't hit that right. But something along the lines of really making sure that you're consistent with your messaging. And that's your big source as a leader, talking about consistency and really hitting that messaging. So I love that. And I appreciate that insight. Next tagline from a leadership perspective is the burn, which is the name of your podcast, which is also a big part of your leadership philosophy. So can you unpack that for us?
Yeah, so I've found after researching and studying, all these winners that I've been blessed to have the opportunity to work with, that the secret to the highest performers is what I call the burn. And many individuals talk about why and purpose, which is unbelievably important. I mean, so critically important. You have to be clear on your why and your purpose. But I believe, and I've now found from researching and studying and working with, it's actually the underlying burn that ignites your why and purpose, that causes you to show up on the days you don't feel like it, and especially after you win. So for me, my burn is my mom. When I think of my mother, and Ed actually asked me this when he interviewed me on his podcast years ago. He's like, Ben, tell us about your cell phone. I'm like, Ed, why are we talking about my cell phone on your podcast? And he's like, tell him you named your alarm on your cell phone. I'm like, oh, okay, I got it. Now I don't know why you want to talk about my cell phone. Many people don't know you can name your alarm. My alarm on my phone says Janet Fishman Newman Legacy. So when I look at my alarm, which is on my phone, many of you listening, I'm just going to cut it to you straight because I don't like sugarcoating anything. Many of you leave your phone right by your bed, the perfect position for you to hit the snooze button 6 times in a row, and you wonder why you hit the snooze button because you haven't even built an environment that gets your ass out of bed. Mm-hmm. My phone is actually in my bathroom, so it's a short little jog for me to get there. My wife's going to kill me. Amy will kill me because I'm a waker. And when I look down at my phone, it's the second piece of the environment that I've built. It says Janet Fishman Newman Legacy. So what do you think the odds are that I'm going to hit the snooze button and go back to bed? Doesn't happen.
Yeah,
so we have to
powerful.
build environments. So the burn, when I connect to the burn, there's no going back to bed. Many people listening, maybe you haven't been through the pain, the challenge, or saw what Bryce and I saw as little boys growing up, right? Drugs, alcohol, all these examples that you wouldn't wish on anybody. Maybe your parents, it was something different. They each had 2 jobs just for you to be able to have an opportunity to go to school, to put food on the table. And you're telling me you're going to waste their sacrifice? So that individual listening, if that resonates with you, Bryce, their why and purpose might be, I want to provide the best possible life for my family, and I want to be an unbelievable leader when I walk through the doors of my organization. But your burn is that you will not waste your parents' sacrifice. So then that sacrifice ignites the why and purpose. So when you don't feel like it, but you think your parents sacrifice, there's no wasting the day. You do the work. Many of you listening right now, you are making sacrifice for somebody. And just like these 2 little brown eyes watch my mother come to the dinner table with that IV stand, there's somebody in your house who's watching how you show up in every move that you make, just like I watched my mother. And when you think of the sacrifice you're making, you better not waste a day, because that's the example that you're setting for the individual who's watching you. So it shows up in many different ways, Bryce, but the burn has really been what I found to be the secret of the highest performers.
I love that so much. And when you were speaking at Amberley Lago's event, that was a big part of your presentation, and it connected with me so well. In fact, I gave a keynote, or created a keynote a few years ago called the 3 P's of success: pain, passion, purpose. So in my words, tapping into that pain, which then develops a passion ultimately to your purpose, but in your words, the burn. And that just really spoke to my soul. So I want to dig in. And I want to make sure our audience, had some context there. Now, my next tagline, which I absolutely love from you, is distance on Fridays, which fires me up so much, because I just hate it when people make such strong progress and momentum and they take their foot off the gas. So unpack that for us.
Yeah, so for probably, I have to go back and figure it out. I think it's been over 10 years. Every Friday, I've posted Champions Create Distance on Fridays. Bryce, it drives me nuts. I've already pulled all my hair out because of it. It drives me nuts when people will send me a DM. What does that mean? I'm like, the fact that you have to ask me what Champions Create Distance on, that's the problem. But that's society. We're all taught, just make it to Friday. And if you can make it to Friday, oh man, just eat your muffin at your desk and then just wait for that bell to ring, ding, ding, ding at 5 p.m. And then, man, your weekend starts. And people check out with the first bite of the blueberry muffin.
Oh, yeah.
Number one, you've been eating healthy all week. Get the damn muffin out of your mouth. Make sure that you get your workout in. And if you've built the discipline and the momentum throughout the week, why not continue the momentum? Do you really want to eat the blueberry muffin, feel bad that you ate the blueberry muffin, then go to your kid's soccer game on Saturday going, what the hell did I eat the muffin for? Which ended up turning into Friday night pizza night, because you'd already eaten poorly in the day. And you said, if I already ate poorly, I already ate the muffin, I might as well eat the pizza. Then you didn't do what you were supposed to do at work. So now you're actually sitting at the soccer game where you're supposed to be present and focused, cheering on your kid, and you're thinking about poor nutritional habits and the fact that you didn't do anything at work on Friday. You slowed your momentum. Then something at 4:30 on Friday happened, which took away some of the momentum that you had built, and you can't even believe that you actually have to go to work on Monday. And Bryce, like I said, I don't talk about riding around on unicorns and sliding down rainbows. And this is the point in our time together today where some people are like, all right, I don't really like this dude. He's a little too straight for me. Like, he's just too giving it to us straight. But this is reality, Bryce. And I think we, as coaches, we have a responsibility. I'm having fun with the conversation with everybody. But the reality is, some of us make these wrong decisions. I'm not saying I don't eat pancakes. I'm not saying that I don't occasionally eat a blueberry muffin. But for me, those things tend to be more scheduled. It's not like, oh, I just like, well, it's Friday, let's go eat some muffins. It's like, maybe Saturday I'll eat some pancakes with the kids. But it's like, I know I'm going to do that on Saturday. I'm going to dominate my nutrition throughout the week. And I think we've just become a society where we let ourselves off the hook far too easy with discipline.
Amen. you are speaking to my soul. And friends, you better be paying attention right now. I mean, you are dropping truth right here. And, in many ways, I see a society as of late that's entitled and soft. And, you being straight shooter, I mean, that's what we need. And we need strong leaders, strong communication, strong vision, strong direction. So I certainly appreciate your candor. I know our audience does as well. All right. So moving on, I want to cover, interestingly enough, you touched upon it a little bit, but I want to unpack it a little bit further, consistency and routine. So you talked a little bit about consistency. You're one of the most consistent guys that I know. And it's interestingly enough, I say this because as I was talking with one of your teammates about the coaching program that I enrolled, which I'm just over the moon excited to be able to connect with you, build even a stronger relationship and learn from you from all the success. But when I was asking one of your teammates, can you tell me a little bit about Ben and your working relationship? One of the things that he said was he is the most humble, genuine person and the most consistent person I know. If Ben's going to tell you something, that he's going to do something at this date, at this time, consider it done. So one, I wanted to be able to provide you some acknowledgement there, but then two, unpack that. Like, what does consistency mean to you? And I also know that, and I don't know the amount of days, but it's a ridiculous amount of days. It's, I think, thousands of days that you have done a branded workout. So incorporate that in your response, if you'd be so kind to enlighten our audience.
Well, first off, I greatly appreciate you sharing those thoughts. I did not know that part of your conversation with our team took place. I really, really appreciate you sharing that with me. Discipline is how you win. And I know I was having some fun and I was being direct earlier, but I do it because I want every single person listening to win more. And I said it earlier, you can only lead somebody to the level of discipline in which you live. So there's no doubt in my mind, Bryce, who's had this amazing career, amazing success, helped Bedros build just an absolute machine of making a difference in people's lives. That because you look the way that you do, because of your discipline, when you walk into a gym, people are going to listen to Bryce. If Bryce was 50 pounds overweight and he walks into the gym that he owns, whether you like it or not, people are not going to listen the same. So for me, I've had to say, well, wait a second. I'm going to go walk in to the halls of the Malmore football complex in Alabama. I'm going to be at North Dakota State. I'm going to be at Kansas State. I'm going to be with these NFL players. I'm going to go to training camp visits in August. I better make sure when I show up that they know I'm taking care of my side of the fence. And what it's caused me to do is to realize that if I'm not disciplined, I don't have the right to have a conversation with them about discipline.
Amen.
So when these players know, or somebody I'm coaching, or somebody who's part of one of our programs, if I tell you I'm showing up at such and such a time, I will be there at that time. And more than likely, you're going to find me there early. If you say, hey, Ben, I need you to follow through. Can you do this for me? It's done. If I say yes, it's done. I've worked out 1,807 straight days. And when I say that, I'm not talking about like, oh, I did 20 push-ups and called it a workout. It used to be a 45-minute workout. Now I've added 500 push-ups to it, but it's a 45-minute workout. It's all body weight. It's planks. It's air squats. It's jumping jacks, all unbroken for these crazy periods of time. It takes 45 minutes to do it. Most people cannot do it one time. Like they can't get through it one time. And I've done it 1,807 straight days. And in April of last year, we added the 500 push-ups a day. I don't say that to impress anybody. I say that to say discipline wins. And so if I'm willing to do that every day for that long, I could have any conversation I want to with Bryce about discipline. It doesn't mean that you may not be able to help me with other areas of my life where I could be more disciplined, but I know that I could have a conversation with you because I know what discipline feels like because I feel it every day. And so for me, that's an incredibly important piece of being a leader. You can't be the leader who talked about how he was in shape 10 years ago, and then I'm going to talk to you about you being in shape today. It doesn't work that way. That might work, but it's not going to work at its highest possible level. And quite frankly, I don't think people are going to listen.
Oh, I know that to be true, Ben. And unpacking my leadership framework, which there's so much synergy, which I talked a little bit about. Lead yourself, lead your family, lead your empire. Leading yourself, the first form of leadership, self-leadership to me is fitness. If you can't be fit and take care of yourself and be disciplined, and both of our words, how can you lead others? You can't. So that just really fires me up. That really, really connects with me. And friends, I hope you're paying attention. This is absolute gold. If you want to build a business, build a better life, you have to be a strong leader. You have to be disciplined. And we're hearing this from one of the greats right now. So appreciate that. As we continue on, I got a few more questions as we wind down, and we're respectful of your time. But this has just been fire. As we transition to my last few questions, I want to unpack. I mean, yes, we're talking about discipline and mindset and coaching, but when we break it down, life is finite. We're only on this planet for a very short period of time. I believe that purpose is earned and developed and manufactured. From your perspective, Ben, what is your purpose? Why did God put you on this earth?
So I actually wrote down, it's interesting you asked this question because I don't really get to answer this one all that often. When I started my work as a financial advisor, which is what we talked about earlier, that's what led to the start that I had, because I had this passion for the business for me to get that first speaking engagement. In April of 2004, I started my career as an advisor. In March of 2004, I was given a little, it was like a pamphlet, like a little document. And it was from our managing director, a guy by the name of Matt Blocker. And in it said, what's your vision? What's your purpose? What are your goals? And, I'm a 25-year-old kid, and you don't get asked those questions very often when you're 25. And I wrote down this purpose statement. It was to empower and inspire individuals to uncover their passions and desires to seek a greater vision for themselves. Bryce, I wrote that down in March of 2004. I have said it every single day. I now have what I call a legacy statement. I still read those words every day, which means I've been reading those same words every day for over 20 years. Now I added one word. It's educate, empower, and inspire individuals to uncover their passions and desires to seek a greater vision for themselves. That includes my family. That includes you. But what's interesting, Bryce, isn't it wild that I wrote that down before I started as a financial advisor, but look what I do as a career now. Back to long obedience in the same direction with aggressive patience. Many of you listening, you may not be where you want to be in the chapter of life that you're in or what you think you want your final chapters to be. But Bryce, I wouldn't change anything about any chapter that I've been in, because every chapter I was right where I was supposed to be, when I was supposed to be there, learning what I needed to learn to become the man that I am today. And I still look forward to adversity. I still look forward to challenge. I still look forward to learning, because I believe we're never finished.
Mic drop, my friend. You have so many awesome sound bites. I'm going to repeat this one more time. Long obedience and aggressive patience. I haven't heard it in that way before. I'm going to repeat it again, but it just speaks to me, because that is the definition of success. That's what it takes. I really appreciate you sharing.
Thank you.
I had a question about legacy, but you did a great job of incorporating that.
Legacy is my mom, brother. I'm carrying on her legacy every day and hoping that, my wife and I can be examples of what it means to be good parents, to be good friends, to be good people, so that our kids can go on and be great people and leave the world a better place. This world, brother, this world needs more people to love on people. This world is so damn broken. And that's why, I get energized. I see somebody like you, and even I could feel it in our DMs when we first, started talking. It's like you just feel the energy. Like, this guy wants passion, excitement in life. We live in a broken world, and there's things that are broken about me. It's why I still have 2 coaches. So it's not that we figure out the whole formula, but my goodness, to not have the chance to love on people, to make the world a better place, we're missing our opportunity.
Heck yeah. And legacy is a part of my mantra as well. And I want to acknowledge you. We were talking offline, but speaking of legacy, my business partners, Bedros Cooley and Jay Redman, and myself launched a coaching program called the Legacy Tribe Group, which our mission is to inspire personal, professional, physical transformations to increase our clients' impact, income, and legacy. So factory installed in the fabric of our mission and my mission as well. So I appreciate that. Ben, 2 last questions for you as we wind down today. And this is a little bit of bonus round question, a little bit of curveball, but who is your biggest hero On the other side, who is your biggest enemy?
Oh man. Um, it's going to make me emotional. My biggest hero is my mom. And my biggest enemy was my dad. You know, my dad is my dad, and I'll always have a love for my father. But Bryce, my dad beat me down with his words so badly, I wish he would have put a fist in my face, because those wounds would have gone away fast. And some of his words still stick with me as a 45-year-old man today. And it's hard to say that, but sometimes I think in life we have to lean into the truth. And that's something that I still have to work on every day. I journal about it every single day, is that there's this little boy inside of me that my dad basically told me from his words, you'll never be good enough and you won't amount to shit. Mm. And I've learned to persevere by having great mentors and coaches who knew there was a little boy in me that was strong. And now I believe that, Bryce. You know, my father passed away 2 years ago, and now I can lock the gates of life every day and tell that little boy that I'm strong. And that's the reality, Bryce. You know, people can, you could say USA Today said this or this, yeah, I'm this or that, or I won these championships. Everybody listening, we all have the stuff that we're working on. And we're all broken in some ways, or we've all given our power, our truth to something that really wasn't the truth. And as sad as it is to say, my dad was probably, even though I love the man, I learned so much from the man, it's probably the biggest enemy I ever had in my life.
Well, I appreciate your vulnerability and kindred spirits again, my friend. And that takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of courage to share. And I know it certainly touched me, and I know it has done our audience as well. You know this to be true. We both know this to be true. Life happens for you, not to you. Adversity is your and our advantage. There's no doubt in my mind that, you know, having the father, having your mother, that dynamic has made you so much stronger, so much more capable, and you are such a better man, better leader that have impacted the world from that. So you already know that to be true, but I'm speaking that truth not only to you, but to our audience, because there's a huge lesson there. Ben, this has been absolutely credible. I am so grateful for you and your friendship. My last question for you is, this is the CEO show, the Chief Executive Officer show. What does being a CEO to you, Ben, mean?
So one of the things I've loved about CEOs is a CEO knows how to leverage. So a CEO is a great leader because they trust their ability to do great things, but to leverage to people that they know can help them achieve even greater things. So I think it's important as CEOs, lean into your strengths, but don't ever be afraid, ever be afraid to ask for help.
Mic drop. Before we wrap today, Ben, where can our audience find you in the small case they haven't, or small chance they haven't already connected with you already?
So at Continued Fight is the handle right there on the screen, and probably the best way to stay connected on X and on Instagram. And you get me on those platforms. You know, occasionally it might be somebody from our team posting a video or something of that nature, but if you send a DM, I'm going to be the one who responds. And I look forward to staying connected and having an opportunity to make a difference.
And that you have. And as we wrap today, I just want to take a second to acknowledge you, not only for your time and your energy and your wisdom for being on the show, but for being a rock solid dude. Your energy, your passion, your leadership, your drive, your mindset just fires me up so much. I'm grateful for our friendship. I'm grateful for your mentorship. I've been very grateful to have a lot of success in my life, but I look up to people like you. And you're doing incredible work. And I know this is just the start to an incredible relationship. So thank you for already being so awesome. And I'm just excited for this to continue. So thank you again.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you, Ben.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And thank you so much, Bryce, for having me on the show. And we are just getting started. And the last thing I'll say is go green.
Go white, my buddy. So what an awesome show, friends. I know you got a ton of value, assuming you did too. Like this video and then share this with someone in need. This is going to be super impactful into humanity. So that's all for today. And remember, adversity is your advantage. We'll see you in the next episode.